Hi everyone, this is Alex Lindsay again, and we're here for Final Cut Virtual User Group number 2. So it's new and improved. We've got a bigger table. I don't know if we have a wide shot of this. We're kind of just happy to get it all working, but we've got, and of course, an incredible cast, because that's the most important part of a user group. So of course we have Mark Spencer, of course. Hey Mark.
Nice to see you.
Chris Fenwick. And where are you coming in from, Chris?
I live in Emeryville.
Emeryville?
And I do a little podcast there about the Final Cut.
Little one.
Little podcast about the softwares.
The Final Cut.
Pixar City.
Very.
Yeah, right near there.
Steve Martin.
Yes.
Mike Matzdorf.
Thank you.
Noah See, I want to say Cadner. Sorry.
Everybody wants to say that. It's Cadner.
Cadner. So, and this is a star-studded crew here. I mean, we have, I think, about a century worth of editing experience, spread out across the bunch here. And so, of course, if you're watching, if you're watching here, you're in Hazu. So if you're seeing this event, make sure to ask questions. Now, we're going to go through. The way we've kind of figured it out from the last one is that we will, someone's going to do a tip, and then we're going to open it up to questions. And those questions can be about the tip, but they can also just be about things you want to learn about Final Cut. There's a bunch of people here that are really smart, that spend a lot of time in Final Cut. So what you want to do is just ask those questions and vote them up and down. So look at the ones that have already been voted on. You don't need to keep on repeating them, but vote those questions up that you want to see. Vote the ones you don't care about down, and we'll just keep on jumping on the most popular ones. So who's first?
I think we should let the new guys do the tips.
No, you gotta get them. You gotta let them sink into it.
Yeah, sharks.
Yeah, exactly. No?
Well, I'll go.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Chris is ready to go.
I will say that I think one of the most hidden, not hidden, but like the unloved features in Final Cut 10 is the timeline index. And I use it all the time. I use it like literally just today, if I go down to the timeline index under clips, I can see all the names of all the clips. Now, I had a thing, it was like a 6-minute thing, a whole bunch of lower thirds, and the producer wanted to check the spelling of a couple of them. Oh, go to John's lower third. Well, the files are named right. I just search in, boom, boom, boom. Timeline jumps right there, and it could have been a nightmare. But to check the 5 or 6 lower thirds I had to do, it was seconds instead of minutes.
I'm going to open up a timeline here that actually has a bunch of timeline titles in it.
Okay.
You can see,
Yeah,
I agree with you, Chris, is that you have all these titles and, you know.
Now, these are generated inside.
Right.
If I zoom in there, do I have more? Yes, it just says titles, and that's okay. It would jump to the titles. My files were actually some animations I had made outside in After Effects.
Oh, yeah.
And because I have a standardized naming convention, it always has the guy's name. It says name hyphen, Mark Spencer. So type in Mark.
I think these are actually being displayed by roles. If you look down here,
Oh.
and it says show clip roles, and you can say show clip names.
There you go.
Then they're going to have the titles in there, and then you can search.
We all
by
get
those.
smarter, just like that.
Immediately we see the benefit
centuries
of
now.
putting all the heads together.
But your point is well taken because all your titles are over here.
Exactly.
And you just click, and the playhead jumps to exactly the title.
Yeah,
that
and
you're,
if
that you're
you
interested in.
expandicate this thing out, you can actually read the names.
Expandicate?
Great
Yeah.
word.
That is an awesome word.
It's a Greek word, derived from the Greek word expandos.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Excellent. And one of the things that's important, I think a lot of us get used to, using a lot of the metadata and tags and everything else, but naming conventions are
Oh, absolutely.
important for all
Yeah,
of our
and
workflows.
like literally just today, the producer I worked with had me touching 5 completely separate projects.
Right.
Oh, go to this, and I'm jumping back and forth between things all the time. My mind would just explode if I was like, oh, gee, what kind of mood was I in that day? Where would I have stored that thing?
Yep.
You're big into your whole naming thing. I love it. So.
Well, and I think that it's, again, when you start working in larger projects, but also you always think about when you're going to come back to one 6 months later or a year later.
Or hand them off.
Exactly.
In our just like Pixelcore, in our office we have a standardized way of working, so I can literally hot swap a seat with a guy, and he goes, "Okay, I'm up to speed."
Right. No, that's perfect. Very good. Let's see if we got any questions coming in here. Tim D says he agrees. All right. That's not a question.
I totally agree with
Let's
Tim.
I
debate
totally
that.
agree.
Tim, you're wrong.
So the most popular one right now is from Steve McDonald. And he says, don't have 10.1.2, but can you overlap clip selections?
What does he mean by that?
I think it means clip selections in the browser. We
Hi,
mean clip
Steve.
selection.
He's a listener of the show.
Ah. So, and I believe the answer is no.
No, you have a range, and as soon as you make another range that overlaps, it just
Oh, I see. In the browser.
in the browser when you're making initial clip
Can you
selections.
show it?
Yeah, we have a general philosophy: show, don't tell.
Yeah.
We can talk about it all day.
Show it.
We actually have a computer right here.
You know, I'm kind of
crazy.
used to doing an audio podcast, but that is cool having a screen there. I gotta say.
Video is amazing.
It's the future. Video.
It's the future.
First thing there'll be video. Next thing there'll be video editing applications. And
So you can
Yeah.
go ahead and make this a little bit.
But you could overlap two separate favorites.
Or a favorite and a
No, I
selection.
think what he's suggesting, Steve, is like there I have an in out point, and I think what he's saying is I want to overlap. I want to say I have an in and out point. I want to start the in point there maybe.
So maybe it means this, so Shift Command I and Shift Command O to make a separate range.
Shift
that's
Command
overlapping.
I. See, I just lost my.
It's not
going to
do it.
It's not going to
Right.
do
Yeah,
it.
you can't make two separate
can't
overlapping
overlap,
ranges.
But the point of having a selection is so that you can get back to it. So if you made a favorite and then made a separate favorite,
Yeah.
you could get back to them as.
I think favorites, if they overlap, they will connect into one. I don't know if you keyword
I think
something,
you're
if you can have overlapping keyword sections.
No, you're all right about that. It makes one long favorite out of it if they
Yes,
overlap.
correct. Yes.
That's why you can keyword a range if you
was at
want
this
if you want to get
moment I
around that.
realized
But
he was
Yeah,
the
but you're right.
dumbest
So
guy.
favorites cannot overlap, and selections can.
Yeah.
You can have multiple selected.
Something I
overlaps.
would do to get around that would be mark the selection as a favorite and then use markers in there to sort of define the different portions of it.
Yeah.
Label them.
Oh, so you just basically go through a clip like this, and you just mark and then skim to the next section. By the way, skimming turned on here, which it isn't. So you basically go in and you just skim, mark, skim, mark, skim, mark, and then you use these markers to define where you want your ranges to be. Is that what
Well,
you're talking
let me
about?
grab the mouse for a
I
second.
just turned the snap.
What I
on
was
for
saying was, if
Thank you.
if you take this whole thing
Yeah.
and mark it as a favorite, then you can say, oh yeah, the whole section is a favorite because it overlaps. But then you can label the different markers within that,
Nice.
and that would be a way to sort of differentiate the different bits of the same chunk,
Right.
if that makes sense.
next question is from Marcus Moore.
Oh.
And he asked a question for Mark. Do you see any advantages to extensions in Yosemite over traditional plugins?
I have not touched Yosemite. Final Cut doesn't run on Yosemite right now unless you do some certain things, and I will do it when it's out. So I can't. Who knows?
Right.
You do
Time will
not see
tell.
any advantage.
No advantage yet.
Not yet.
Well, and that's,
Right.
I'm still back on a couple versions. We have a tendency to move very, very slowly.
Mountain Lion?
What?
Mountain Lion?
No, I'm on System 9. No, I still got a little. No, it's just, there's a lot of. There's
Snow
still,
Cougar?
Yeah, there's some 10. I don't remember the names anymore, but it's 10.8.6, I think, is where most of our computers are. We've got a handful of them that have been updated to 10.9, but the issue we get into is a lot of the I/O stuff with some of the apps and the plugins and everything else. And since we work mostly in a live environment, we're very
Skittish.
when things don't work when you're doing post, you go get a coffee and run it and install. When things don't work in live, then there's thousands of people upset.
You're fired.
I'm fired. So we tend to go slowly. So okay, great. So one more question and then we'll move
next
into it.
step.
This is from Brad Balfour, and he said this is in Potomac, Maryland. In addition to tech tips, does anyone want to talk about the business side of editing?
Oh, that's a broad question.
Charge.
Big question.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
I have found charging is the best way to go about doing that.
Charging for what you do.
Yes.
Not doing it for free.
And it's the joke would say,
That
if you're
would
good at
separate you.
something, never do it for free. Oh, wait.
I was just thinking that quote. Fantastic.
What? Joker?
Yeah.
I've always said that editing is kind of like driving a cab, And if you hop in a cab and say how much to get to, south of Market from SFO, the cab driver's going to go, 25, 30 bucks. But if that guy in the back of the cab says, hey, can we swing by and see the Golden Gate Bridge? I've never seen the Golden Gate Bridge. All of a sudden, that cab ride took a different turn. And I always like charging by the hour. I think when you get into oh yeah, we can just do that for that much, you end up cruising around the city, taking people to see different sites that you didn't agree on,
Yeah, we do some by hour. I think we do a lot of our edits are all pretty much fixed bid, but they're the thing is that we're pretty good at we do the same thing over and over again, so it's not like a TV show or a film or a whatever. I'm going to take this 1 hour thing and I'm going to cut it down to 2 or 3 minutes for the web, or I'm going to cut it down to 6 minutes, or I'm going to cut these up, and we have kind of some big buckets of how that's going to look. But there is a lot of restrictions. So one of the big things that's important for us is, I don't know how you guys manage this, but non-recursive changes. Like that is something that shows up over and over again.
What do you mean by that?
A non-recursive change means that, so we'll do 3 rounds of edits with the client with non-recursive changes. And that means if you didn't say it before, you can't say it again. So what happens is if you give me a list of 10 things that you don't like, you can only work inside of those 10 things that I didn't do right.
So you can't add 11 and 12 later.
That's
By
an
the way,
ad.
I didn't notice on the first round that these 3 things are wrong.
Exactly.
You can't do that.
And then we go, oh, that's fine, but now that's
That's a change
that's going to
order.
that's a change order.
Yeah.
So the key is setting something up where we know exactly what this should look like. We're going to show this to you. We're going to show it to you again. Then we're going to show it to you again.
And we're going to keep winnowing it
And we're going
down.
to and you can take those things and say, I didn't like the way you did that. That's fine. But you're checking those things off. But once you give us the 10 things in the first one, you're limited to that for the next round. And if you take 6 of them off, you're limited to 4 things on the next one.
like this.
And anything after that is a change order. And that is done by hour. Like not by hour, but it will say, it'll cost you $300.
It's another
to make that
bid.
change.
It's another, yeah.
And we find that gets rid of most of our extraneous movement, because really what gets you is those, we did a whole bunch of changes, and then now that I look at it, I've got 6 other things that I want to change, and that's fine. The big thing is setting up a system that allows our clients to make the changes that they want, as long as we're getting remunerated for it. So it's totally fine for you to make those changes. It's just as long as it's just time and money. Because I think a lot of people get frustrated when they do a fixed bid and they don't have the rules of engagement set up,
Right.
and then you just feel like you're getting pile drived, by crazy clients.
That sort of
Well, I
thing can
hope
go
that,
on forever too.
I really want you to do a good job on this one, because I have so much more work coming.
Yep.
We're
I
gonna,
don't even hear that.
we're going to do a lot of these.
I don't even hear the other side of that. Like when they
Your
start
brain
saying,
tunes off right away.
like when they I just there was this thing. I used to work with a director, pretty well known director. Leave it out of that. And he was really funny, because he'd give you like, you not have your job, whatever your shot was done. I was doing previs, and you realize very quickly that when you talked to him and you said, I didn't get the shot done, and then you would give him a reason. That was
He stopped
something.
listening.
There was just like literally he wasn't upset. He was just waiting for you to stop talking. and then he'd wait, and then he would pick back up again when you said I will have it done by. But there was no and it was just, he didn't throw a tantrum. He didn't get upset. You would just go, I didn't get the
just stopped
shot done.
listening.
I had this trouble with the rendering. And there's a problem with the texture. and you just see him
Noise,
just-
buzz,
just-
buzz, buzz,
blah,
and then you say,
when are you gonna have it?
yeah, and then I say, and I'll have it by Tuesday. And you go, all right, that's
Okay,
great.
Tuesday.
And then that would be, that would, and then you move on. So that's when people start talking about new work, coming. I always just shh, and
White
then we
noise.
get back to whatever
Yeah.
we need to, because that is, and you do, like when I'm a producer as well, and you do think this is going to lead to a lot of new work. You don't really know, but that's always the dream.
There's a good friend of mine, audio engineer, local, Bill Raffetto. He's gone now, but he used to have a thing when people would say, "Oh, I have 10 of these. We're gonna do a lot of these shows." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you 10% off." Really? Yeah. First 9 are full price. I'll give you the 10th one free.
But the other thing you always have to think about when you're doing those is that like we had when we first started getting work, from Google is a good example. Like the first one, my friend that who was kind of part of like telling me about the work that needed to be done. She's like, if you get this one right, just don't screw the first one up.
Right.
And then you get really busy, and she was right. No, but and what I mean by that is that you do have to treat all of these like they could be that. I think it's also hard for me. I know I get you can get really jaded you got 1,000 of these coming in and everything else, and get feisty with the client and push back and forth. But you don't oftentimes know. I have a lot of clients that come in that they were the craziest client, like just cuckoo.
I normally don't get to talk to anybody.
What?
It's better when I don't talk to the clients. They just
Stay out.
Just keep them in the back.
keep them in the suite, throw food in once in a while.
But the thing is that the other opportunity though is when the clients are high maintenance. We'll just call it high maintenance. Oftentimes, many other people can't work with them either, and so when you figure out whatever that angle is to work with them,
You're in for life.
Yeah.
they just like.
If you can stand them, you just have to make the decision that like I am willing to deal with this, whatever the level of craziness is, and like okay, but I found a way that it works for me, and they'll glom onto you. But if you make a deal for them, whatever that first job was, anytime you're like, oh, if you do this for me for this rate, the next job will be some rate. You've locked in your value. Your value's been
Never go
established
up,
in that first
yeah.
job, and it's difficult to impossible to say, oh, actually on this one, I'm going to start charging you my full rate. Like,
There you go.
Huh? What?
Yeah.
doesn't work.
I
Always
don't know.
start
I
high.
paid you a lot of money last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's a little that's
great.
our business
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
That's a question that will probably come up every single time, and we'll answer it some different way. The next
Yeah.
time we'll say, oh, just do it all for free.
I was just texted a question.
Oh,
Whoa.
It's from my daughter, Junie.
when will you be done?
Is this on
Hi,
top?
Junie.
Yeah.
Junie wants to know, does it annoy you when the other guys ask a question because I only want to see daddy? Yes, it does, honey.
Leave. I mean,
Well, now, how does your business end of things work?
Well, just to hit off what you guys were talking about, I always think it's a good idea to charge something no matter what. Even if you're doing somebody a favor, charge something, because then you don't have to feel like you don't feel like you're being taken advantage of, and vice versa. The other person feels like they're given something in exchange, even if they have no money. But in respect to my business, I mean, I've been in the editing business, in the assistant editing business on movies. It's always a long prospect where it's months, maybe even a year. The longest movie I ever worked on was 2 days short of a year. And that's the kind of thing where you just get started and you keep going and going and going and take whatever anybody throws at you over the course of it. There's some security in that, which is coupled with anxiety and nervousness as you approach the end.
The end, yeah.
Which kind of where that's me right now. But it's just to charge something, work as long as you can, and be smart about what you're doing, because people will glom onto smart people. People recognize smart people, and they're gonna they want to try things. People are very experimental. You have to be willing to be flexible but be firm, and you're going to spend a lot of time with these people you're working with in the feature business, in the TV business, and you have to be friendly, because you're basically married to this person for 6 months to a year, and if they don't like you, it's just a miserable relationship.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think the only last thing that I think is important is that you always do great work no matter what. Like if you're going to take it on, don't have it be like, this is a cheap job, or I'm not getting paid very much for it, so I'm just going to kind of get it done.
Yeah.
Because that's just, number one is it's soul sucking, as we, and number
Yeah.
two is that just doing horrible work or whatever. And number two is that it's just, you want to be building something you can show people, and you're building your reputation.
Embracing it, whatever it is that you're doing, you have to embrace it, because there's always going to be a better job somewhere, one that's perceived as better, which usually isn't better. But there's levels of things, and things are more respectable or more impressive. But it's all work and it's all good, and you just got to do your best and be excited about it.
And definitely almost everybody that I know, especially in Northern California at least, I mean, everybody that I know that is just busy all the time. Like they're busy with something that is making a little bit of money or not much money or a lot of money, and usually it's a mixture of all of those things.
Yeah.
I think that some people who hold out for that I'm going to get $125 an hour, $150 an hour on everything I do, or whatever that number is that people create for themselves. I think a lot of people that aren't busy aren't, they're not making those networking connections. They're not making those, they're not getting that work of, that pile of work that they can show people. They're not getting the experience. I think those are also and I always think that people should be working you should always be doing like your own stuff. The problem with doing your own stuff is that you I know that when I do my own stuff, my problem is that I'll either spend way too much time on things that I'm just interested in, or I'll move my content around based on the fact that I don't want to do that. And usually I'm dealing with like visual effects, and so I don't want to play with it. Anyway, all right. So
I would imagine you have the best keyed home movies ever.
Doesn't make home
I
movies
got him
he's tired
started.
when he
no,
does
no,
it.
I do, the home movies
draw.
are pretty fun. so they're a little zany. So anyway. Okay, so next tip. Who's got the next tip?
All right, I'll do it.
Tasty.
All right. So I see a lot of posts on the Facebook, and I get emails personally that are along these lines. I wish Final Cut Pro 10 could batch export. I can batch export out to whatever, my favorite flavor of MP3, MP4, or H.264, or what have you. And most people use Compressor for this because it has a batch encoding workflow. Well, I'm here to show you that you can do it all in Final Cut. In fact, there are some distinct advantages to encoding in Final Cut over encoding in Compressor. And I saw your ears pick up there. I saw you. Okay, so maybe I should cover that now. Here's the thing. The share technology that's built into Final Cut Pro 10 is much more advanced than the share technology built into Compressor. And I'm telling you right now,
So you're talking about the process.
the process, right? The way the process of how it's shared underneath the hood and what's happening. Well, for one, right? For one example, you know how you render stuff out in the timeline, effects, titles, whatever. When you export out of Final Cut, all those render files are being utilized. So it's like this. When you go to Compressor, Final Cut Pro has to rebuild the entire timeline. It doesn't use any of the render files at all.
That's not good.
So it's faster, much faster to export directly out of Final Cut. In fact, I have to tell you, I never use Compressor unless I need some tweaky setting. I'll go into it to make my own little Coke formula of some compression setting with the right data rate, whatever, but I won't actually encode out of it anymore.
Interesting.
Yes.
Show us how to do this
Okay,
batch
but
thing.
I wanted to set that up because
I got it.
because it's really cool. So batch. So the first thing is, I want to take a little jaunt over to the preferences window, and I want to go into the destination pane. And the first thing you want to do is, if you want a compressor preset, you're going to want to use this compressor settings icon over here, and you want to drag it into the sidebar. And then you're asked, well, where is that setting? Now, it just so happens that I'm on someone else's computer, and I have my own custom settings right here, which aren't here because I don't have my computer. But just pretend for a moment that, let's see here.
It is worth pointing out you won't see this
Yes.
if you don't have Compressor.
You won't see, did everyone out there hear that? No, that's right. You won't see any of this if you don't have Compressor installed, right?
So get Compressor.
Get Compressor, what, it's $50, right?
Worth it.
Yes.
So I'm just going to open this podcasting one. It's H64 video podcast. Everyone does video podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now that's assigned as a preset. Or it'll actually show up in the share menu is what I meant to say. But here's the trick. If I right click on this preset, notice there's an option that says make default. Let's go ahead and choose that. I'm going to choose default. I'm going to close this. And let's say I wanted to export any one of these projects. I'm going to select this project. When I go to the File menu and choose Share, notice by setting that as a default, the Command E, now sets that as the export preset. So Command E will now target that preset I just selected in the destination pane.
Okay.
So now, what I'm going to do is this. I want to export this out. Select it. Command E. Brings this up. Go to Settings. Let's see here. I can change the preset if I want, but I'm not going to here. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to save this. I'll create essentially a folder on the desktop somewhere, and I'll call this Exported Steve's Exported Movies. I'm sure you can be a lot more creative than that. And notice that name there happens to be the name of the project that I selected. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now I'm going to do it again. Watch this. Select that. Command D. Return. It's already targeting the same folder. Return. Select the next one. Command D. Return. Return. Now, I did that 3 times, right? Now check it out. I'm going to go to the dashboard, background process, and open this up. I want you to see this. All 3 of those movies are being queued up in the share menu, one after the other. There they are. They're in a batch right now. And so when these are done, I'll have 3 movies that were spit out exactly like Compressor, except I didn't go into Compressor. In fact, if you think about Compressor, it's actually slower. You got to go select it, file, send to Compressor, puts in the BAS window. You got to find the preset. You drop the preset on it. You set a destination. There's a lot more steps than what I just did here. And I've done this with 54 movies just recently. I just did a whole tutorial, and the whole thing, I just queued them up like this, Command D, send them out, boom. I had 54 movies. I walked back, and I had a full folder of everything I coded, and it does it much faster than Compressor because of the reasons I stated before I started this. I think there you go, batch exporting.
I think
right in
that's
Final Cut.
very cool. You can set up your preset from Compressor like that.
Just, well, there you
Command
I left you
D, return,
speechless.
return.
Good tip. Great tip.
I was going to jump to another one. We have a little bug in our little system here, so if you're watching, we're going to jump to another tip.
Alex, didn't you like that tip?
The tip was great. You know, I have to get into it. I have to get into to exporting out of Final Cut. I'm very superstitious about that.
What?
Let's go. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on, fight.
So you spend a lot of time with the so my whole thing is I just want to get it out of. I've had a long history of, broken renders
Right.
and all kinds of stuff out of Final Cut, or things not showing up with the right audio sync.
Sure.
Those are things that I find that Final Cut 10, maybe not the newest version, but at least the Final Cut 10s that we have, a lot of times things look like they're in sync, and then I export them out, and it looks like they're different than they were when I was looking at them in the timeline. And so a lot of times for me, I want to get it just out of Final Cut. So I export it out as whatever it came in as.
Full ProRes out.
I just want ProRes out. I now have a file.
Yeah.
It's done.
the
Like
way-
I don't have to go back into it. I don't have to think about it, and its file's done. And then I export that back out, so that if there's some change in the compression that I want to do, if there's something else I want to do, I'm no longer going back to Final Cut. I'm just compressing it.
Can I? There are a few other things I'd like to say about that. No, not to convince you, but there's some things when you batch encode out of Compressor, you can literally quit Compressor, and because of the software built into it, it'll still keep churning away even after Compressor's been quit, because it's a background. It's like a batch. I forget what they used to call it. A batch window or the batch monitor. Or something.
It's called the share monitor.
Share monitor, right?
Yeah.
Thank
Which
you.
sometimes drives me
But,
crazy.
well, here's the thing: you don't have to have Compressor running. You can quit it. That's not true in Final Cut. Right now, if I was spitting those movies out, if I quit Final Cut, a little file will come and say, "Hey, you got background tasks running. So if you cancel all of your movies." But at that time, I'm going to walk away. I don't need to quit Final Cut. To me, it's a small price, so I can't quit Final Cut Pro. Not a big deal. But I'm just telling you that's one thing. But to your point, Alex, I want to talk about why, in some instances, you'd want to make a master movie and bring it into Compressor. There's some advantages there. One is once they are actual ProRes master files in Compressor, one advantage is you can use the distributed rendering feature. You can actually set up Compressor to spit as a cluster. You can't do that if you send the timeline directly to Compressor. It will not work as a cluster. But if you export as a standalone ProRes,
Right, 'cause
bring
then
it
it can
in,
cut up all
then it'll
frames
cut, right.
and-
So what I'm saying is there is advantage. I want to say that don't use Compressor.
Just
and
don't
you-
use the way
just,
Alex
just
is
don't
using
the way. Yeah, exactly. So you exactly. Oh, sorry. All right. Anyway, sorry. That was kind of weird.
I agree with you. I get my ProRes files out all the time because from that file, I'm going to generate many different output things, and I do them in. Actually, I really like Media Encoder. It's really fast. That's my compression of.
AME.
Yeah.
And I use Episode for some of the stuff that I do, and so on and so forth. There's a bunch of little bits of Episode and Episode Engine.
You know what I use? I use Amazon S3 encoding services.
Ooh, I haven't done that yet.
You can batch. You can take tons of files, upload them to Amazon, and then we'll batch them out for you very fast.
And
in
how
HTTP
big is
format.
the check at the end?
Well, it's 12 cents per gigabyte.
Oh, right. Oh, it's just storage.
Storage, right? I know the bandwidth. Wait, no, I forget what the
you're
storage is,
sending
but the
big
bandwidth on Amazon, because we're using Amazon Web Servers more and more as a company,
Right.
because the cost per storage or megabyte or gigabyte is actually fairly reasonable, but it's 12 cents per gigabyte delivered. In other words, if you're
For encoding.
encoded and then delivered, if you're making a request off Amazon servers, it's 12 cents per gigabyte.
Per delivered gigabyte?
Per delivered
So
gigabyte.
If you start with a 50 gigabyte file, but it compresses it down to a 3 gigabyte file, you're paying for the 3 gigabytes and not the 50? Because that would be
No, there's
do you
two
pay
separate costs. No,
53?
you're still
In
paying
and out.
in Amazon Web Services. You're still paying for the footprint on the drive every month.
For the
But-
storage,
but
right.
the 12 cents is because presumably you're going to be delivering it to people, either on your iPad or
Right.
HTTP streaming. And I'm just saying it's 12 cents per gigabyte. That's what it boils down to. It's actually good.
That sounds like the next user group.
Right.
Amazon S3 virtual user group tomorrow night. Crystal Core.
I like Amazon Web Services.
I just got him thinking. Get him go.
We made a sale there.
So
Get your affiliate code, Glenn.
Yeah.
yeah, got a question from Michael Garber.
Oh,
Michael
Oh,
Garber!
Michael Garber. He said,
love
"Hey guys,
names.
has anyone encountered a bug where clips show up as missing in the timeline? There seems to be no way to reconnect. Have tried FCP Exchange to force a reconnect, but no dice."
What version of software is he coming from, and is he on?
Michael would
Yeah.
be on
I
10.1
think
too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the same Michael Garber. Yeah.
Um,
yes, it is.
yeah,
it is
it-
the same, Michael.
It is the Michael Garber.
Here, I've seen this. This is kind of complicated. Coming from an older version, Final Cut. Let's say from 0.09 or 0.9 or 10.1 original. Sometimes, if things came across and were relinked, hard to describe. If relinking from one machine to another would sometimes result in what we call these ghost clips, which mean that they showed up in the timeline as being there. The color, they weren't red, they were black. Yep, and
Seen it. Been there, done that.
the way to get rid of it is to overcut it. There's no way that
Basically
I found.
replace edit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I like that overcut.
Yeah.
We're going to overcut you.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, and the problem with that is most often, since you can't see anything, you just got to go by the time code numbers.
Yep.
And that are in the.
I had this
in the
discussion with Alex Gollner. Good morning, Alex. I know you're up. And he had a very interesting solution to this. And he said if he starts a project in, I'll say like Alex 10.0.9 or whatever, he'll never try to upgrade it. So on his system, he actually has multiple instances of Final Cut 10, and he goes, "Oh, this is a 10.1 project," and so he opens in there. But he says he's never had the ghosted clip problem.
Well, it's good for Alex.
Fantastic.
but I can't. There is something to what you say, because I recently went back and fished a bunch of stuff out that was 10.09, and I took the XML and I brought it into 10.11, and it came up with a bunch of these ghost clips. And so I went back to a different partition that I had with 10.09. I opened it up there. I relinked it because it needed relinking anyways, because we had moved the media. It was all there. Exported that XML and then opened it up in 10.11.
And it worked?
And it worked.
So there is the thing, when you guys were doing all the tutorials about how to get from 10.09 to 10.1, one of the things you did say was make sure you relink all your stuff
Before you go.
and then go.
You
Yeah.
you did say that.
Yeah. Relink first. I mean, you can do
Right.
it afterwards, but it's like you got to clean up sometime, and it's better to clean up beforehand.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly the thing that can happen is an
And that is
offline
why
clip
you
becomes a ghost
trust
clip.
The gentleman from Ripple Training.
I never did see that video, but I.
This is from I think it's Alex. It's Alexander Aladar Gollner.
There
Yeah,
you go,
that's him.
bam.
All right, Alex
yeah,
Gollner.
yeah.
Alex 4D is what we call him.
Right.
Very good. A new editor edited a feature film in Final Cut with no assistance. Her first assembly was ready a day after principal photography. Good news for producers plus post coordinators. Should Apple market Final Cut as the NLE that doesn't need assistant
Oh,
editors?
this is one of our customers, actually.
This was actually, I
That
just
was on
interviewed her
FCP.ca.
the other morning. She'll be my Monday episode of Final Cut Grill.
is it?
Gergana.
This is. Yeah.
I can't remember your last name, Gergana. I apologize.
This is on FCP.
That's CO, yeah.
Yeah, and she's also at the top of FCP.co right now in a print version. But fascinating story. The studio head hired her to concurrently with the guys that were really, the team that were really cutting the movie, they put her in another trailer and they said, on your market set, go. and she just went in there. She totally capitalized on all the stuff with Sync and Link.
And shot notes.
Oh, no,
Shot
Shot Note X, not Sync and Link. Sorry. And she did have a script supervisor, scripty, out on the set taking notes in the Video Village tent. Sent her files, and she literally had her assembly of the film done the day after principal photography. And the Avid boys are still cutting today. This was a month ago.
A team of Avid boys.
Yeah.
This was after only about a week and a half of training with our man Sam.
Yeah.
Messman.
Sam Messman,
That's
who was on
amazing.
last show here,
And this-
trained her.
Somebody
you
who
know.
doesn't, somebody who had very little, well, none in terms of feature editing experience, hadn't even
22 years old.
touched an Avid before.
I was curious about what that meant, first assembly. Was she, because she was basically assembling circle takes.
Yeah.
But was she also actually cutting scenes and doing the back and forth and doing the, you know, doing the whole thing?
I think what she ended up with was kind of like a very long version of what could be the movie, like a very, like an assembly cut where it wasn't just every take cut down.
She
but
was,
like
she was making
an
the edit
actual
decisions
scene.
to do the wide shot and go into the close-ups.
To your,
That's-
I think, based on the conversation I had with her, it was her interpretation of the movie, but long. She said it was about a 3.5 hour cut.
Yeah. Which
And,
makes
and
sense
she
on a
was
first
doing
assembly,
grading, and she was also taking the script supervisor's notes into, I believe, Shot Notes X, which
Yes,
is kind of this app that will take a spreadsheet, an XML out of Final Cut, and merge them into something where you can actually see all those script supervisor's notes in Final Cut.
Right.
So, but to the question behind that one, should Apple market Final Cut as something that doesn't require assistance? I think the answer to that question, well, we shouldn't tell Apple what to do, but I think the answer to that question is kind of a complicated one, in that I think it can be used that way. I think we could all agree that a one-man band or one-woman band could definitely use Final Cut to completely finish a film on their own, as this story proves, and it can also be used in a multi-user environment. I mean, either way,
Well,
it's very flexible.
Just to speak to, I mean, I talked to Sam and I heard about what he had done over there, and I think it's awesome. I think that there's a few things which, if she was kind of existing in that bubble, without people asking her about visual effects, without people asking her about sound stuff, without people asking for all the stuff that people get asked for every day on a normal basis, and it's a very different headspace. You know, cutting, assisting,
that's fair.
everything
That's
else.
very fair.
There is like the caveat of, you know, the shows that are the union shows, which they don't allow that. So that's not something that would happen. The editor can't work without an assistant. So there's that. But Final Cut is great as far as it being one person can do a lot. And it's kind of
really,
meant
I mean,
for
I think
that.
the vast majority of Final Cut users
Yeah.
are working without an assistant.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like we think of like assistants being something that you use, but in the film world,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I mean, in most of the films I've worked on, there's at least 2 or 3 that are
Yeah.
loading stuff into the Avid and doing a whole bunch of other things. But when you're looking at the average Final Cut user,
Mm-hmm.
most of the ones that I know, not working on film or TV, but everywhere else, you know, they're
Yeah, it's
It
great.
has to
It's
be fast.
really great for that because of everything it can do, and it can do it so fast. You can, like, you know, put your system stuff together. You can cut the picture. You can do sound work. You can output for, you know, you can make your own DCP.
Right.
Easy enough, and I think for me, it's a very different headspace. Definitely possible. I would say no is the answer to should it be promoted that way.
Well, I think
But,
that promoting
you know,
I think promoting it around the idea that it's fast. You know, I was talking to some folks that worked on a very, very large event, big sporting event, and they brought in experts that knew Premiere, Avid, Final Cut, and just said, teach our guys how to do it. We're going to figure out which one is fastest. You know, like when to make a decision, we have to turn basically from the end of the event to the clips that go out on YouTube. We've got 2 hours, you know, to have them up. You know, so that's the game that we're playing. And they were like, then they popped up a picture. You see this Mac Pro, and you kind of know what happened. You know, they were like, not even close. Like they said, not even. Like I said, you said we could not figure out how to do it within twice as slow as Final Cut on Avid or Premiere. Like we couldn't figure it out. Like we would try to do something else, and we try to do something else, and we try to figure it out. And he said the fastest way to manage, you know, to take something in and play it all out as a Mac Pro with SSD, you know, like just totally. You know, they had it as you know, the money was not really an option, not really an issue for them.
Money is not an option.
Not an option. Not money was not.
Sorry.
Sky was the limit. No. was not an issue, and so but they said it was just there was nothing faster, and I think that definitely talking about the speed. I mean, I think that's what even opened my eyes in the early days of with iMovie. Is the first when iMovie first came out, it popped out, and I was like, oh, we'll play with it, and I realized that I had edited this whole little like 2 or 3 minute piece faster than it would take me to set up the project in Final Cut. And so I would play around with it, and I thought that was a great newsroom. I thought iMovie could turn into a great newsroom thing, and I still think I think Final Cut is a great. If you're doing news and really fast turns, I think that Final Cut's like built for that.
And one thing that's really cool here, I believe, in the import menu. Where is it, gentlemen? You can open, or at least you used to be able to, an iMovie project. Where is that now?
Yeah, you can import, and it should be under import iMovie.
Import. I think they've moved it.
That's interesting.
At any rate.
But yeah, you can still import iMovie projects, and they will come in with all the edits you've done. If you've done keying in iMovie, if you added the world maps, the one thing that you can't do in Final Cut, you can do iMovie, there's cool world maps.
Yeah.
Any titles, anything you do in iMovie is completely supported in Final Cut. It comes in and looks exactly the same that it
And
did.
there's actually, if going through iTunes, there's actually a workflow where you can get your iMovie from your phone into Final Cut 10 also.
Whoa!
Mind
Head
blown.
exploded. I think I think you're not. You may not be seeing that option. Maybe this machine doesn't have iMovie installed on it.
That may be
Oh,
why
that might
it
be
should
it.
be there.
That
yeah.
could be it.
But you can go,
Would be logical.
if you edit on your phone or your iPad, you can then take that project, open it in iMovie on your desktop, save it, and then bring it into Final Cut. So you can definitely start something out in the field and add Final Cut Love to it afterwards.
I'm just waiting for a video interface for my iPad. I really want one. Like plug it into my Lightning.
HDSDIN.
HDSDIN and maybe HDMI, for the kids. But I think that into the iPad would be awesome. You could be pulling stuff in and editing on your iPad.
You would be the guy to do it, yes.
Working on it. All right. Next tip.
Talk about roles.
Let's do it.
Okay. One of the big things that I think is vastly underappreciated and underused by a lot of feature editors that I've talked to and tried to get psyched about Final Cut is everyone is so obsessed about tracks and keeping, their dialogue on 1 and 2 or 1 and 2 and 3, and then music, and if everything has its sort of designated track. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said, and the ADR is on track 16, and I had to sort of sit with him and talk and explain roles, and I had to spell roles because it's ROLES. And
he just got hungry. Man.
yeah, because people talk about sound rolls and camera rolls and then cinnamon rolls.
Yes.
But on the movie we just were doing, we basically stick with the primary roles: dialogue, effects, music, and then we also had roles that were on each one of the microphones that were in our audio tracks, for anywhere from 2 to 9 audio tracks at any given time. So there was, this person's lav, this boom, this other person's lav, this remote mic, any of this stuff, and you can go into Final Cut with the audio and expand the tracks, checkerboard the tracks as needed with each one has its own role, all the music has its own role, and when it comes time to take all the sound and turn it over to the sound department, presuming you're working on something that has a sound department, you export your AAF file for Pro Tools, and each one of these roles, if you do your settings correctly, is then assigned to its own track. So instead of
In the QuickTime movie.
in an AAF file,
Okay.
and you'll send an accompanying QuickTime movie with that. But what would happen in the past is you send your AAF off to Pro Tools, and the dialogue is all in a couple of channels, and then they will take each piece and bring it down into its own track and figure out who it is, and Final Cut will take care of all that stuff automatically. Thanks for opening that up, whoever did. But on the left, I don't know if you guys can see the screen here, but this is an example of roles and sub-roles in the left corner.
We can all see your screen.
Okay, well, and they can
The
see the
folks at
screen
home,
out there
they can
in TV land.
I bet they can too.
This is an example of sort of a basic setup with roles. There's a few video roles, some for the visual effects. Titles have their own role, all those dialogue sub-roles, and then the one at the very bottom, that was a temp screening that we had, just an internal screening, which we did mix tracks for, and then brought the mix tracks back in for editing. because some people like to do that. And all of that stuff can then be sent back to the sound guys. They know exactly what was used, exactly where it came from. And in the case of the stems at the bottom, the stems represent the entire roll, the entire reel, like 20 minutes worth of picture. And then if there was cuts in those stems, or those other stems were pulled in from other screenings, the sound guys can say, all right, well, we're fine from here to here, and then we need to make a change here, and then we're fine from here to here. And they can sort of use that as kind of a change note helper, at one way to help get changes done. And there's a lot of changes that happen in sound. And so I guess the tip is learn how to use the sub-rolls, take advantage of the sub-rolls, and know that when you bring something in and it doesn't come from the effects browser or from iTunes, it's going to be dialogue, even if it's not dialogue. So be sure when you bring your stuff in, you assign the correct role to it for what you want it to be. And you can sub-roll things later as need be, but just make sure that your basic roles are assigned on input.
So the roles and sub-roles in Final Cut 10 become the long-lost tracks once they get into Pro Tools.
Correct.
And then the beauty of that is because that audio can live with a clip, whether it's up here or down here or whatever, the simplicity that we have of being able to just scatter the audio about, so to speak, it all comes back together at the roll level. So now the rolls help us get it out to go out to Pro Tools or whatnot.
Yeah, some people have devised ways to sort of segregate the roles in the timeline. We were talking about this earlier. It's, you know, if there was groupings, if the stuff would group, it could be 5 tracks deep or 10 tracks deep, but it would still be all the dialogue would be together. I like that idea. Apple, I like that idea. But I think one thing that's nice is you don't have to worry about that when you're editing.
Yeah.
And the idea of like ADRs on channel 16, so you get the ADR from the ADR session that you just had, and somebody wants to have it cut in right away, so you cut it in, and you got to be, so click here, you're in your Avid, you click here, and you drag down here to track 16, and you be sure you're routed properly, and then you plug it in exactly where you want it instead of just going cut in, and it cuts it in. So I think there's, again, one of the speed advantages to Final Cut is you don't have to think about it at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that takes a long time to kind of sink in. A lot of people editing, they're like, oh my God, audio is going all over the place. I can't keep track of anything. I really need 7 and 8 to be music and effects, dialogues 1 and 2. And then finally there's that click, like, that doesn't really matter as I'm editing. That can be anywhere because who cares right now? I just want to be creative. Later, when that really does need to be mixed down, if I use rolls, I can steer them anywhere I want, and it's even better because now I can tell every last bit of music, no matter where it was in the timeline, to always be on these 2 tracks when I export. And that's, to me, a great advantage.
Yeah, there's a lot of things audio-wise that create like faster workflow. Rolls is one of them, and the like keyframing audio, dipping a section of audio. We're selecting the range tool, grabbing it, and pulling it down. It's so much faster than working on any other system that once
so just to, why don't you show,
yeah, okay.
Why don't you demonstrate that?
All right, so you got some audio right here. Drone Dark Suspense, and it's just a little too loud, so oops, sorry for that, out of sync. It's just a little too loud in this section, so I'm going to use the range tool and select a range, and then pull this down here, and what that does is it creates a little fade down, silence, fade up. What it did is create 4 keyframes, and doing that on an Avid is not fast like that. I'll just say that. Avid does lots
doing
of
that
other
anything
things.
else that I mean, I remember doing it in Final Cut 7.
Well, Final Cut 7 was significantly faster than an Avid, but this is significantly faster than that.
Can I give a little? Can I go do one more little audio tip on this?
Yes.
Yeah. This is something that I've done for quite some time. I've never done the dots. The dots drive me crazy. The little keyframe dots. So what I would do is I would put that thing in a sub storyline, and I would pick the section that I need to turn down, and then I would just I'm sorry, we don't have that keyboard shortcut. I've remapped the relative audio level to the way it used to be, Command Option L. So then I pull it down there, and then by hitting Command T, I have cross-faded to a different portion, a different instance of the same audio file. And there's multiple advantages to that. If your soundbite changes length, let's say this is the music that's dipping down for a soundbite, I can change it real quickly like that. And then the other thing that I do quite a bit
You're rolling the edit point.
I just
basically.
rolled the edit point. The other thing that I do quite a bit is I'll come in here and go channel EQ, and then I'll take that guy, open up our inspectorizer, open this guy, and then what I'll do is
Making up words
What
again.
Greek term is that based on?
so
Inspectus.
this is what I call mini truck mixing, okay? So like if we were in high school and we had our mini truck, a little 10-band EQ, everybody had the little smiley face because I like the bass and the high end. Well, the human voice is really just in this little tunnel here. It's like about 1K, 2K, something like that, you know? And to turn the music down, you really don't have to turn it all down across the whole audio spectrum. So what I do is I just open up a little graphic EQ. I find the part where it fits, it makes the most sense, and I can actually just dig a little hole there. And now what I've done is I've just taken the audio down, the music down where the human voice is. And I left the rest of the music
I like
up.
the visual. I like the
You see what I mean, though?
That's
Like,
great.
let's
Yeah,
all
really got
do
it.
this.
Yeah.
But
That
the
is
whole
great.
point is here's the music, and what we typically do is we turn it all down, right? And you can get a whole lot of clarity just by digging a little hole in the EQ for the voice.
a great idea.
Leave the bass in, and what you'll find is you could probably bump that sound file up another 2 or 3, maybe 4 dB. And your music has more presence and pushy, but you still have vocal clarity. So I stopped using that. I've been doing this since Media 100 in the late 90s. I crossfade to it, and now with multiple instances of that same sound file, I can EQ them separately.
It's cool.
Bam! You can use that on your Avid if you need to.
Well, that's great because also people, that's one thing that Avid people love is crossfading audio like this.
Yep.
And there's the ways to do it. I mean, keeping it in the storyline
Yeah.
and adding the dissolves is one.
And that's
one
really
great
the
way to do
trick
it.
to it is you have to put that sound file in its own storyline, and it's so easy to change the length of the dipped portion. Oh, I want to extend that sound bite a little. Okay, done. So anyway, I will undo everything I just did, so I don't.
You don't
mess
have
up.
to. This is a copy.
And for many of
Yeah.
our viewers, the Media 100 was an editing platform that many of us used 2 decades ago.
Right.
I just do want to mention because just today we recorded a MacBreak Studio where Steve went into detail on using subrolls, and that should be out it won't be out next week, but probably the week after. So where we go into detail on exactly.
You've been
how
It's
to
actually,
do
you know,
it.
here's the
whole
thing:
time
is I
that Mike
can.
was talking about.
It's actually quite simple. I could show it in like 30 seconds. The thing is, sub rolls. You just go into the modify menu, go to edit rolls, and you want to make a sub roll. Let's say from effects. You can see I already made a sub roll there, but it's just select the main category that you want. In this case, effects. Click the button right here. Now, let's say I have a bunch of,
Gunshots.
gunshots. All right, and that's a sub roll now. So for whatever reason, I have these are a bunch of these are. In fact, I tend to like to turn this on, this little thing to clip roll, so I can see how all the clips are tagged, and I can see that's a dialogue, that's
Totally didn't know that
dialogue.
was there.
This is actually wrong. This is actually music here, but what's really nice about the way of working here, these are all mistagged. I don't care because I can just go back here to modify and just choose assign roles that needs to be assigned music, and boom, instantly tagged. And what's really great about the you mentioned earlier, the timeline index, is when you go into roles, this is what's great about this. You go through this, you can quickly select, let's say music, you could say what's tagged as music, and you could say, oh, that's a piece of music. It tells you right there, that's what's all my music tags, and I know this is a piece of music over here, and it should have been tagged. Well, I can then just go over here and select that, and I can even, I would use a keyboard shortcut here, but just in the interest of clarity, I'll just go over here and just choose music. And see, as soon as that, now it's tagged and it's included in the highlight. So visually, I can see instantly which ones are tagged as music, which ones are tagged as dialogue. And if I want to make sub rolls, like these are my train effects right here. These are train effects. I might want to sub roll those out. I select it, and if I go to the modify menu, assign roles, notice here that sub roll train effects right there. Choose it, shows up there, and notice here down in the timeline index, you can see the sub roll. You could select just that sub roll, and it highlights just those tags. It's just a fantastic way of working.
You know what else you can do with these?
Searchable.
Yes, searchable.
What else you can do with these? Let's say I want to EQ my music. I can take my channel EQ, drag it over here, drop it onto, Actually, it doesn't do that, but I wish
I
it did.
I was going,
we were like,
whoa, this is going to be a good one.
Well played. Well
You're just
played.
teasing.
Hint,
Well
hint,
played,
Apple.
well
we would
played.
like Apple to listen to that.
I would love to be able to put a compressor on all the dialogue. I'd love to be able to EQ everything at once. And
Couldn't you drag that into the-
that would be the user interface of how it would work. Just drag it over, drop it on, then go into the audio thing.
Wait, let me just try something. If I drag that into the inspector, do I get that?
No, you do not.
Oh, okay.
Wah, wah.
Well, at least I can adjust the volume pan. Wow.
Collectively, the whole table is in lead
Yeah,
forward
like-
moment.
Yeah,
Really?
But what if
Really?
you, what if,
He's
what
gonna-
if you
he's
do
gonna-
this? What if you do this? If you go over here to clips, and you say music, and then you say Command 2, and you say Apple A. Oops, damn it.
I see what you're saying.
Okay, so
No, you go to roles.
no, but you
You
can't
could paste you could paste it as an
You
attribute.
can, but the problem with doing
Okay, so
that.
they're selecting all the music.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
The
you
problem
say
with doing
change.
that is adjusting it. You'd have to
Oh.
you would have to make sure that your compressor or your EQ
Right.
is set exactly right, and as doing it as a subgroup, if it were an audio mixer, as an insert there, so to speak,
Right.
then I could just diddle it and.
Okay, well, it is now on all your 14 items, and then you could do all of them at once.
But you can't. Can I change it?
If you change it now on all 14, you just have changed it.
Go ahead and
You're
click-
welcome,
No,
Apple.
no, go ahead and click the little
Open
graphic.
the
the little
EQ and make a
graphic.
change. Yeah,
Yeah.
open up the thing and make a big change, and then select individual clips and see if that change is applied to them.
Looks like it.
Let's close this. Oh, this would be so cool.
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's see.
I need a fail
No,
horse.
you're
great.
almost
So
welcome.
close. That's one of the
That was almost. I was like, we're on the edge of our seat.
Yeah.
It's gonna work.
Glad I
things
came
where
out
I'm in
today.
the shower and I'm thinking, I bet you could do this. And I run over to and I go, yes, it's going to work. It's going to
dripping
go.
soap and
then right at
shampoo
the
on
very
your
end,
keyboard.
yeah,
Imagine-
seriously, it's where you come up with those ideas. Like, I bet it could do this.
But that said, if you did it on one and built a preset, like
Yeah.
that you loved, then
Yes.
you could do that.
Yes, you could do that, but again, the problem is now I want to tweak it.
Yeah.
And now I gotta.
And the reason is for all you people that like our video, that are, like for me, because like video and audio is kind of scary, but you can't just blanket apply an EQ because all the audio that you're feeding into an EQ is different. You have to adjust it on a clip by clip basis. So that's why those presets in the EQ are just useless. I mean, the voice that why would anyone apply a one size fits all on an EQ or a compressor for that?
I would like
Well,
one for a
but-
phone for
right.
us.
But the one thing I'd say about that is that, and this doesn't come from editing, but this comes from like motion capture that we do. But it's
mocap.
audio and motion capture looks very similar. It's a lot of samples that all do what they're doing, and so there's a lot of things that you do that are very similar to it.
It's from the same sound roll, maybe.
From the same sound. Sometimes, yeah, exactly. But the I wonder what motion capture would sound like. Anyway, so we can test that. Anyway, so one of the things that a lot of times you want is you want to apply something. You almost want to layer across everything that says, okay, I'm going to do this to everything, and then add something else on top of that for individual clips to make adjustments. But you want that. You know what you really want is a EQ that you can apply to everything and say, I'm going to make everything. I'm going to tuck everything down after 16K, or because there's some hiss up there or something else. I want to do that with everything, and then with these individual clips, I want to add another filter on top of that to do something else to it. And the thing that would be really interesting is being able to have that effect, but also being able to concatenate it, so that it's not applying one effect and then another one. It's saying,
It adds them together.
I'm going
and
to
just
take
the
the
net
net of everything that's being added there and add it to the audio clip.
After we finish, I'd really like you to explain to me what concatenate is, because I've been wondering that for years.
If you're
Yeah, what is concatenate?
concatenate, that's the easiest way to describe it. Concatenate is basically it's something that if you were doing in Shake, which I used a lot, you do a lot of. So what concatenate means is that I'm going to do all the math before I apply it to the clip, and this is usually video we were doing it with, but before I apply this to the clip, I'm going to figure out what the end result of all that math is. So if I do a curve that increases the gamma, and then I do a levels that decreases the gamma, I'm going to do the math between those to figure out what the delta is that I'm actually changing. What I'm not doing is taking the image and moving it up in one direction, and then do the next filter and push it down to another direction, because that would cause image loss.
So a great example is you shrink an image down to 10% of its size,
Yep.
and then you increase it by 10 times its size. So if you did that as separate operations, you would have an image 1/10 the size, and you would lose all that resolution. And when you blow up 10 times, it's going to be completely pixelated. But if you say, wait a minute, if I'm shrinking down 1/10 and I'm going 10 times the size, 10 times 1/10 equals 1. So actually, I'm just going to leave it alone.
So, and a concatenated solution would just not do anything to it. Or if you did it, if you scaled it down in half and then up 25%, it would only scale it down 25%.
Okay.
Whatever that is. So it wouldn't do all. It wouldn't
takes
do,
into account everything before you do it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And those would only work with certain operations, but especially with this kind of stuff, you can
Good explanation, isn't it?
I love
a
it.
great explanation. That's
That was
the
a
best
really good
explanation of
explanation, Mark.
concatenation.
I read it somewhere.
Okay, a couple more questions here. All right, so this one's from Ron Priest.
Ron from Australia,
Yes.
from a down under.
It's a good time in Australia for these
It is,
shows.
good.
If we move this to, we've been talking, by the way, if you're watching, if we move this to
8 o'clock in
early
the morning.
afternoon,
Yeah.
Ron Priest is going to be like,
But the Europeans have been grousing. And
Yeah.
I know, we might have to move this thing around, periodically.
Yeah, we need to, we need to.
Yeah, so these are the what we have to endure as a global
Community.
user group. Yeah.
Virtual.
Virtual.
Ron Priest says, has Apple acknowledged the quote-unquote paste attribute bug?
Yeah. You know what he's talking about?
I don't
We
know.
should
but
define
it
Yes.
sounds
the
very
paste attribute
serious.
bug.
So,
is.
so the brief thing is, if you color correct a clip and you copy and paste that correction on another clip, when you export, that pasted correction will not show in export.
Although you will see it in the timeline, you will see it in the little export window. Like, oh look, that's what it's going to look like. And then you hit export. The actual file that it exports, it's not color correct.
It's kind of a big bad bug.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
seriously
sure.
uncool.
Look,
bug.
they know about
I will
it.
say
There'll
for
be a
certain that
fix.
they. I will say for certain that
Yeah.
they do know about it.
Because I email to him every day.
All I can tell
You
you
and
is yes,
1,000.
yes with a capital Y.
Okay. Next
And,
one.
and by the way, we should just mention
fix.
what the fix is for
Yes.
that. Is if you just toggle the correction on and off, you're fine.
The ones that you've pasted,
Just go in there and just go
take
on,
them
off,
on and
on,
off,
off, on,
and
off,
you
on,
can
off.
actually do them all at once too if you just want.
I wrote an automator script that'll go through
yes
every
and
click
no.
and toggle it on and off, and it's no.
Yeah, actually, if you select multiple clips, it's not possible to toggle them on and off. The toggle is not available. But
make the keyboard shortcut.
well, yeah. So I think
Oh,
you're gonna.
this what a great
That leads to
segue.
Noah's got a great tip.
Editing is amazing transitions. Okay. Well, yeah.
So sorry. Next question.
No, we got the segue. We'll come
All
back.
right, all
we
right.
got all night.
So let me do a little bit of setup here. I'm just going to create a new project really quickly. Call this Noah project.
Select all. Select all.
That's
Command
all
A.
right. He wants a
No,
Noah project.
I want Noah project.
Definitely has to.
Okay. So
Judge Wapner.
here's something that comes up often is somebody will say, hey, I wish Final Cut Pro 10 could do X, Y, Z. And sometimes I find that it actually can, but the command that would accomplish it has not been assigned. And let me explain a little more what I'm talking about here. If I go into the command editor and I do, you'll see that there's just a whole boatload of commands here, but not all of them have been assigned by default to the keyboard. And the reason why is there's only so many keys on the keyboard, and so they can't all be there. But if I do a quick sort, let's say by key, I can start to see all these commands that by default, this is the default keyboard layout, have not been applied to anything. And here's where you can kind of become a bit of a power user by adding back in these commands when you need something. And one that I think comes up a lot, and I think, Mark, you mentioned that you have just done a recent tutorial that covers this, but one that's very useful is color board toggle correction on off. And I'll show you why that's so useful. Just going to edit a shot into the timeline real quick. All those lovely markers. Get rid of the timeline index. And
I'm getting hungry.
I know.
That's a plastic cupcake, by the way.
Oh, I'm not so hungry.
Not so hungry.
Not anymore. Okay, so here's the issue. Here's why this is so lovely. So I come over here, start doing some color grading. Let's pretend like I've been doing this for a while, and I'm starting to kind of lose track of what this shot looked like in the first place. I have no way to quickly go back. I can't see a split screen. I can't quickly toggle back and forth. In order for me to go back to the way the shot was originally, I got to go back here. I got to click the correction on, off, click it back on, go back into the color board, play around with it some more. This can be kind of tedious.
Kinda.
Yeah. So, but there is an easy fix. I go back into the command editor. I'm just going to search for it now. Toggle. There it is. Color board, toggle correction on, off. I'm going to just go ahead and reassign it to, let's
Option
say,
C.
Option C. Okay. Boom. The command set is owned by, it's owned by Final Cut Pro. Cannot be edited. No problem. Make a copy.
Noah.
Now I'm going to do
There we
command.
go.
Noah's command.
Oh, that's awesome.
Noah is in command.
Noah's commands. Whoops. All right.
I like it.
So, so now when I save that, now close that out. I can stay in the color board and just burp, burp.
That's great.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it works on multiple clips selected, while the other one doesn't. So if you have hundreds of copy-paste corrections, you don't want to go select every one, select them all,
No, you do not.
Unlike your EQ
toggle
thing.
that, and you're done.
Unlike the EQ guy.
So that's a
Not that we're bitter.
So and there's you'll find there's a ton of commands in there for things you didn't even realize you could assign.
Yeah, that's the thing I tell people all the time is there's a lot of stuff in here that isn't even in the menus.
Yeah, there's things in there that don't do anything yet.
Oh, really?
There's
Yeah.
a couple things in there that are like, oh, that sounds like an interesting thing. Oh,
Yeah.
it's actually not a feature.
Apply
at
key
this
to
point.
multiple clips.
Yeah.
So somebody is using that as a to-do list?
I don't know.
I wouldn't say that, but
few interesting things
could be
to-
interesting.
And one thing that I found in respect to sort of the opposite of what you're saying, where there's things that are assigned that might not be the best idea. We were on the movie passing sequences back and forth a lot, like, hey, do a sound pass on this. Hey, tweak the color on this. Hey, can you build this visual effect? No problem. Where is it? Oh, here's the time code where it is. So you get on the keypad and you start entering things. Sometimes the keypad, when you want to go to a time code, it's a little not as responsive as I would like it to be. But the commands for changing camera angles are also on that keypad. So if you're over a clip and you start entering something, you can change a camera angle, which can get you
In trouble.
get some disapproval headed your way. But in any case, I ended up completely clearing off the keypad because I used it a lot, and putting other things where I needed them. But that was one instance where I don't think it's the best place in the world to change camera angles on the keypad.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
It's yours.
Oh, okay.
we had to come up today because I think we were doing some work and I think you accidentally hit Control-Delete, which changes the filter menu up here to show just rejected, and it suddenly looked like
Where'd
there
my
was
clips
no,
go?
like all the clips were gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
and I
there was
freaked.
momentary panic. So it's you have to be careful. I've definitely hit.
Well, yeah, there's so much. That's one thing where it looks so simple on the surface, but there's so much in there that it's mind-boggling to me, anyways. All this stuff. So.
Yeah, and that's something like I always tell people: be careful that your filter or your find command isn't engaged because it could really panic you. Like, where's all my
Oh, if you've
it's
left something in the search field.
Yeah, because that search field is persistent. So if I
Right,
typed,
right.
exterior or whatever, all of a sudden it's like, where's all my interior shots?
It's persistent per event, right?
I believe so.
yeah,
it
so-
stays up for a long time.
Well, if you click from, if you've tried something on one event, I think, and you've entered some search parameters, and you go to another event, it may be empty, and then you come back to the one, and then all of a sudden nothing
Yeah,
is there.
I don't know if it's pro.
Well, we can look. It's very easy to experiment.
yeah,
So here
yeah.
I've
Yeah,
created
there
a
you go.
search term, RTY, and then I go to another event, and that search term goes away.
Now go back.
It's still there if I go back.
That's actually kind of useful.
Yeah.
Might be.
It's kind of useful until you forget.
Right. I mean, that's like, if nothing is in your event, definitely check the filter and check the search field and make sure they're not populated.
Yeah, well, we
Look
had
at down here. It's different
Next.
though. Check this out. So I search for my gain. I've got to put my little cursor guy in the thing. Okay. So now I go to my transitions. Obviously, there's no transitions named gain.
Well, it
Come
doesn't-
back
it
to
did the
here,
search. Oh, it's
and
gone.
it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, we had used sort of things like underscores and then parentheticals for camera. So it was like, 21 Apple take 2 underscore parenthetical A. And oftentimes if we were looking for something, we would just type underscore parenthetical. If we're looking for, or parenthetical M was the multicam mark.
Right.
And so sometimes you're just like, where's my stuff?
There you go. It's very cool.
Next question, also from Ron Priest, but the most popular one so far. And by the way, if you're watching this, and you can vote these questions up and down, there, as well as ask new ones, but definitely be voting them up and making sure that you're getting what you want. I said, could someone give some clarification on why a render timeline has to re-render on export?
So Steve, you just explained that it doesn't.
Yes.
I don't think
when
it
you're exporting
does.
straight from Final
Should not,
Cut.
if your timeline is rendered, in other words, everything, you have an orange bar across the top, everything's rendered, you should not have to re-render on export.
Maybe he's talking about going to a different codec than the
I mean,
timeline.
yeah, it's
generator.
definitely, if you're rendering different codec, you're definitely going to
Well,
render.
what I'm saying is the render files that Final Cut Pro generates will be used
Yeah,
to
you
export
go-
that file. They won't have to regenerate them. So if you have a key and you generate the render file, it's not going to have to regenerate that render file before it
before
exports.
compressing it.
There's a couple presumptions to that, which I
Yes.
think might happen. Is we're in 2K,
Right.
editing 2K timeline, and making master file exports because you have the controls with the roles out for sound people. Sound people couldn't handle a 2K QuickTime, so we would resize the sequence and then use the master file. Then everything had to be re-rendered.
Yeah, I want to maybe.
Yep.
Quite possibly.
Thank you, Ron.
Next question. This is from Robert Bale. Audio, please. Can you talk about setting the audio compression? So how to make the final audio mix level at -6 dB?
Well, changing the level and using a compressor, I mean, there are
Two different things.
Well, I think what he's trying to do is he just wants to make sure that nothing goes over -6 dB. And so, I guess the only thing I would say with compression is there's compression and then there's limiting.
yeah, compression limiting.
And a limiter is basically just in most ways, it's just a compressor that's turned up. So like when you take a compressor and you set it 10 to 1,
Sure.
that's a limiter. Most of us, when we're doing compression, we're just pulling things together a little bit, and that's a 2 to 1 or 3 to 1, and that type of thing.
Okay, but
But if you turn it way up, you're basically building a limiter, which means that I'm going to scale it. Because when we compress them, a lot of times we think of bringing things up, but what it's actually doing, of course, is it's pushing stuff down and then bringing the gain up, or bringing it up. So it's pulling things together and then pulling them back up again. And we don't have to do that. If we go into the compressor, we can tell it not to do that, not to turn the gain back up. But if we set something at a threshold at -18, let's just say, and then say 2 to 1, it means that everything that goes over -18 is getting scaled down to half of what it was before, but it still can get pretty high. But the limiter, a limiter at -6 would make sure that nothing went over -6, right?
Is anybody else familiar with the term brick wall limiter? It's kind of a music term, I think. And in like rock and roll, I want my album to be really loud. They'll use a brick wall limiter it absolutely is not going to go over this. And I don't know that there's a plugin native to Final Cut that is really like that.
But I mean,
I will
at 10 to
say-
1, now the thing that we do a lot. I mean, especially in live, you're constantly worried about limiting and everything else. And you're just worried about things peaking and things you can't fix and everything else, and so you use a lot of limiters. But the problem is that to always remember that when you're doing that, you're changing the quality of the audio. You're not just. It's not just that it stops. Now, when you start doing it, I find that you won't notice it. Like you won't notice that it's getting,
Crunchy.
just well, not even crunchy. It's just that when you start doing that, it flattens, just flattens it out.
I actually heard it creates listener fatigue after a while if you put too much of that on.
Well, it can, and now when you're listening to radio, they're adding compressing. Like when you're listening to the radio and you're listening to the announcer, X15 Pittsburgh, like whatever that is. When that's all happening, of course you're compressing it, and the transmitter itself is compressing it. As it goes
like
out.
Skype.
So when you're listening to radio, what?
Skype has a hard limit. When you look at an audio waveform of a Skype
Just
recording,
Right.
yeah, there's no dynamics in it.
Well, and because when they're really trying to just get intelligibility,
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna do. But of course, that's gonna make it very present. Like it's gonna pull it forward. But when you're doing anything where you want any kind of subtlety, so if you're doing a dialogue, when there's dialogue, not in radio, but in the regular world where we're trying to actually feel something, that's the problem as you get into this situation. Now, I think that for many people, the lack of limiting and compressing also makes it hard to listen to because people we're not really, for instance, in this case, we're mixing this as close as we can. We're not putting a lot of limiters or compressors on it.
I will
Of course,
also
the guys
say
might
that
correct
because
me,
of the plug-in architecture, there are a jillion really cool plugins, audio plugins that you can use in Final Cut. I started buying some just for the podcast and the recording that I do, and all of a sudden I realized they were showing up in Final Cut. I was like, whoa. Like really amazing compressors, and the kind of holy grail that people have been talking about is the iZotope RX3 Advanced.
That's a good piece of software.
Yeah, it's an amazing piece of software, and it costs 4 times the cost of Final Cut. But the time it does, the time it saves you is amazing, and it's made for hardcore audio sweetening. Boom, shows right up here in my user interface.
Right.
Really cool.
One thing which it's slightly tangential to this is like the idea of pre-dubbing categories of things like dialogue and music and effects, because I think people sometimes will just mix against what their other elements, and things will end up getting louder and louder and louder instead of just like mixing the dialogue against itself, just to have a nice comfortable dialogue feel. And then mixing each element against itself and then putting them all together and mixing them against each other.
Right.
That's interesting.
And also, one of the things is making sure when you think about where you're putting the compression, whether it's on a single clip or whether it's on your total output. Like you may decide, I want to bring the whole output together. A lot of times when you're grabbing onto individual clips, you will pull out a lot of stuff from the background that you may not want to. Where what you're really looking for is I'm not worried about each individual clip, but I want to take the whole thing and just kind of pull it together at the very end.
Yeah, and I mean you could compound.
Yeah,
and the whole thing
and
and
compound it,
do that.
and then step back into it, and
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that is one bit of confusion going into this, is that you don't have the kind of one master volume level of the whole program. Although you can kind of fake that, as we were just talking about, if you selected the entire thing and compound clipped it, which is
Option G.
I generally just compound the audio.
yeah,
Are you talking about the absolute relative volume change, or?
just kind of. I mean, you could do something like that, but then you're not having any balance over the individual elements. But I mean, just coming up and showing your audio meters as you work. I mean, to me that's kind of the best way to at least get it started, is to watch the meters and kind of keep an eye on stuff and then worry about relative and all that kind of stuff.
I mean the meters they're so skinny. I like to
Well, this is
expand.
surround.
I know. I like to expand them out so they're big fat meters.
You mean like drag this one in?
Yeah, that makes me feel so much better.
Trying. Keep trying, Steve.
It's like one of those things.
Yeah, if you drag
There's
all
going to be a
tried
Ripple
to.
training tutorial on how to drag out the monitor.
Let's see if you can do it.
Actually, you have to hold down
You have
the
to grab
option
just
key.
the right place.
Oh,
there's
no?
a- 'cause the
Command and
secret key-
option.
Do we change the keyboards yet?
It's broken.
It's broken.
I like to make my body meters like
These
half
are-
the size of the
me too.
timeline.
These are Noah's commands now. So
Yeah, that's right. I didn't know his commands.
Next question is from Alan Seawright. He said, "If I," this is the most popular question, "If I submit a request multiple times, does it just piss off Apple, or does it serve to show that there's a real interest in the feature bug fix? Do you guys have any insider info?"
well, I guess I could kind of sort of answer that one since I used to work there. No, not in, just to put that out there, it does not piss off Apple in any way to get feedback. It's very much appreciated, and I think that's why it's right in the app. I mean, you go into
But if
Final Cut
he was
Pro.
asking if I submit the same request over and over and over again,
Daily?
does that piss Apple off, or does it actually help because it votes it up?
I wouldn't say it helps. I mean, everything gets looked at and everything gets read. I mean, if it's the same person submitting it over and over again, then we know you personally have
Are
an issue.
really
but-
upset about
Yeah.
that. It's like,
Tweet all your friends and say, ask for wide audio
Well,
meters.
a lot of people don't even know that they could submit feedback. I mean,
And it's right in the app.
Right
well,
in the
Show-
and not, yeah, show what it is.
Yeah,
but it's,
there's two places. You can either do it right in the app. This
Provide Final Cut
this
Pro
gets
feedback.
read.
but what
and
I'm
then
saying,
you can go,
and you
or
can,
you can go right to this website,
yeah.
which is what it takes you.
But I'm sure there's somebody out there. Well, I do that, and I imagine the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark when it goes into a crate and goes into a long warehouse, and somewhere somebody will find that crate someday and open it up and say, "Oh yeah, there's your question." And,
Oh, yeah, wide audio meters. Never got to that.
But Apple reads that feedback.
Yeah.
They do.
we used to get a lot of feedback about that. You know, because so when we first were doing, you know, a lot of these Mac breaks and everything else, we were recording from a Sony F950 444, you know, into Final Cut, and you know, I mean, that's how we just recorded the shows. You know, so we get the 444 green screen, and it was easier. We didn't have a record deck, like literally we didn't have the money for the $90,000 record deck that it would require to hook onto the end of the camera, and the response was generally, yeah, there's like 4 guys in the world that do that. And anything that was wrong, we had to work our way around it. Like, we just stopped asking because they were like, yeah, there's 4 people that do that.
Alex Lindsay clearly lives at the very fringe of the bell curve. That's been described to me as the lunatic fringe.
That's funny.
I like that
Yes,
song.
sorry it doesn't work, Alex, but you and 3 other guys, that's not really a market.
You're gonna need to find a workaround.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so one more, and then we'll go to the next. Then we'll go to Mark's tip. You're right. You're next, right?
I think I am.
We've
Very
all got
patient.
Last.
I think, yeah. So this next one is from Drew Boyd, and from New York, and he said, "Being treated as individual clips, is there a quick way to search for auditions in the timeline index?" A lot of head shaking.
This could be a trick
No.
question.
That's one of
Auditions
my
on
feature
Timeline.
requests is to be able to search for clip type in there. The compound clips, auditions, and the answer is no.
But you can make a smart collection.
From the in the
Oh,
timeline?
in the timeline.
In the
That's already in the
timeline.
timeline.
Yeah.
Ah,
No is the answer to that question.
No. Okay, there we go.
That was
Well,
easy.
wait,
That was piece of
wait.
cake,
Can't you make a smart collection that would be a combination of used clip and audition clip?
Let's try. So we go file, no.
I love it.
That seems. I feel like that might work.
do it
I'm giving
in
you
the
one more
thing.
chance, and then I'm going to take over the mouse.
Okay, new smart collection.
Give me back that mouse.
We'll call it
Noah's
Mark
Smart
Spencer.
Well,
These
the
are
better
all
thing.
Noahs,
Well,
right.
go ahead.
Okay, then we double click it. And then we do
Clip type.
clip type is
Audition. It's already got it.
audition. And then we go the Magic Plus button.
Used
And then
media.
we do used media.
Okay.
Do we have any auditions in this?
Well,
No, we
let's
have
just
Now
make
let's
one real
make one.
quick.
Now you go.
All right. So we have anything
Like a
in
break
here?
dancer.
I think it may find them,
Pass the
but
beat.
it probably won't find them in the timeline, or not in this step.
Well, I'll
they
put
should
it in, and
reflect
I'll
back.
delete it from the. Yeah, I'm editing clips between library. Really? My smart collection
You were
is there.
crossing the streams there, buddy.
Crossing the streams. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and cross the streams.
You guys just erase these hard drives when you're finished doing these
I don't know what's on this hard drive actually.
I'm going to make an addition of the same clip. Replace and add to audition. So I've got an audition clip there. If we go to this guy,
Did I spell your name right?
no clips match.
But wait, wouldn't the audition have to be made in the
So wait,
events?
this has to be all. Oh, any.
Any.
By the
no,
way,
it has to
you're,
be all.
no,
We want all.
but can I tell you why it's not?
Yeah, please do.
Well, you're in one event called FCP 10 in 5 minutes, and the event that you created
The
in
sequence is in a
was in
different
the
event.
Quintessa event.
oh,
I think
the
you're in a-
project. You mean the
Yeah.
project.
Here,
that
what
we
you
did.
can do
Yeah,
is
yeah,
drag
so
the smart collection out of that event, and drag it into the Quintessa event. So you
That's a
can-
great thing to show anyway.
Yeah,
So I'll
yeah.
drag the smart collection into, let's say, Charles.
Yeah.
I don't,
That can be your tip.
okay.
Smart collection can be
Sorry.
dragged.
They can
then-
be shared.
then I will-
Friends and family.
I love that.
In fact, here's a good test.
Mark, I'm
Check
giving
this
you
out.
one more try.
Check it out. You got me back. All right. I'm going to make an audition out of these 3 clips. So that's a browser audition, not in the timeline.
Get
okay?
out.
Yeah, browser edition.
Okay. Then I'm going to take this guy and put it in the timeline and add this guy. Oops.
Squirrely mouse.
Drive.
It is Squirrely Mouse.
And I'll take this and add, replace and add audition. So I've got one audition here and one audition here. So now if we click on this, still says none.
That's probably because I made it. You should
Double
probably
click on it
remake
again. Let's look at the parameters again. Click
Parameters.
is
Type is
used.
audition. What if we turn one of these off? Does anything show up?
Yeah, okay, there's the audition.
So there, if I turned off
Oh,
used,
but
it
the-
shows up.
Is used media turned on in
And
general?
if I turn just use media on, does it show the audition?
Is that
'Cause
something you have to turn on in the preference, like show used media?
Yes, you do.
But it's
So the-
showing you anyway.
Huh? It's all clips. It's not. There's no preference for showing used media.
I thought there was.
There
a-
is. Under the view
modify
menu, it
view.
says show used media.
Oh.
Yes, show used media ranges right
Used
there.
media.
There you go.
That just shows the orange
Yeah.
bar
Oh,
underneath.
okay.
How many clicks
So
does
if
it
I
take
just
you?
so type, it
Apparently,
shows me
looking at this table,
the
6.
audition I created in the browser. It doesn't show me the one in the timeline. If I just show used, it will show me
Those are all the
the
clips.
clips are used, and it's not showing me this audition because this audition doesn't exist in the browser.
Okay.
So there is no clip that exists as an audition in the timeline in the browser, and that's what it's thinking I'm looking for. It filters on the browser, it doesn't filter on the timeline.
My head hurts. Can we move on?
It's not going to
That was,
filter.
I knew that was a trick question.
So it's not it's a good question.
You
It's
knew
a
it was
really
going
good
that way,
question.
and you were just letting this.
It's a really good question.
I was interested.
I can make those
show me
grapes
audition
look
clips.
better.
But the thing is, if you created audition clips in the browser first and then added them to the timeline, it would work. But you'd have to create them there first.
Right.
But,
All right.
Next tip. We're going back to Mark. His true tip, not just
My true tip, not that thing. So my tip is about proxy media workflow.
Oh boy.
And this came up because we did this, 10.1.2 came out and they changed once again how libraries work, and that made it better, made media management easier because you can choose where to put your optimized and your transcoded media, your original media. But there's a scenario that we didn't cover in the training that I didn't think many people would be as interested in, but there's been a lot of questions about, hey, I am editing, I just want all the proxies. I'm going on the road, I don't want to consolidate my media with a drive, I just want the proxies. But proxies live where the original media lives, so how can I just get those proxies and go with them? So I'm going to try to answer that. And the way I'm going to start that is with a empty library. So the first way to answer that is setting it up right to begin with, which is not what people want to know. They want to know how to fix the problem they've gotten into. But I will start with, if you're going to do fresh, I'm going to have a new library that's called Untitled. If we look in the library properties, we can see that currently we're choosing to store the media in the library. And media means the actual media you imported and any optimized or proxy media. All of it.
Rendered also?
All of it. No, render is included in the cache files, which you can determine in a separate location.
That even says it.
So right now, this media, if I import media into this, it will go into the library, which happens to be on this machine. So let's say this machine is my laptop. It actually is a laptop, right? So what I'm going to do is like, no, I don't want to do that. When I import media, I want to put it on my RAID, okay? Because I'm in a desktop, I want to put it on RAID. So I'll click Modify Settings. For media, I'll choose to go to Vader, yeah, which is a connected hard drive that we have here. So that's let's call that my RAID, so Vader. So I choose that, and now we can see in the library properties, if I import any media, that's where it's going to go. So that's the first step. Now when I actually import the media, Command-I, and I'll go to, I have some clips on Vader. It doesn't matter where the clips are coming from, but I do want 2 of them.
right underneath this hammerheads, directly
Thank
underneath
you.
it.
Thank you. So I'm going to import 2 clips. I'll show you why. When I import these clips, it doesn't matter whether I choose to copy to library or leave in place, because there may be times you want to leave in place. But I'm going to copy the library location, which is on my RAID, right, on my big honking Pegasus thing that is not very portable. I want proxy media, but the trick here is don't create it now. Okay, if we create proxy media right now, it's going to generate it on the RAID. We don't want to do that. So I'll say import, which just brings in those clips. So if I select the library and go back to library properties, we can see, aha, there is original media on that Vader drive. Great. Now, what I want to do is select these clips, or I could actually select the whole event and choose File. Actually, not yet, sorry. One more thing. Before I create proxy media, I'm going to go to Modify My Storage Locations. If I want my proxy media to be on my portable machine,
your desktop or
I'm going to
something.
switch to my library because my library is on my portable machine. Okay, I could just target my portable machine without being in the library. It doesn't have to be managed media, but I'm targeting my portable machine, which happens to be where the library is. So I'll choose in library, and now if I go under the file menu, and this is what I love, you can choose to generate transcoded media, proxies or optimized, whenever you want. When you import or after. So I'm going to do it afterwards. Transcode media. I'm going to create proxy media. Click OK. And you can see there in the dashboard it's done. If I select a library, I now have, if I can zoom in on this, but I now have Vader with the original media, and then Bellis, which is this local drive, has the proxy media. Okay.
Now you had to start by taking it onto the RAID when you brought it in, and then
Yes.
and then you switch, and it's not moving that original.
No.
It's only
Right. When you change the target for when you modify settings in here, you're changing it for future imports. So now I have exactly what I want. I've got my original media on my RAID. I've got my proxy media locally. I can unplug from my RAID, move away, and do my edit. Caveat is that audio-only clips don't get transcoded to proxy media. So if you have audio-only clips, you're going to need to bring those over as well. So and if you do synchronized clips where the audio is added afterwards, those aren't going to come over. So there's some caveats, but that's basically what you can do. So that's if you're starting from scratch.
Right.
But the question is, hey, I already have transcoded my media. I already have a RAID full of proxy media. I don't have this situation. It's already on there. How do I get that proxy media over to my local machine? So what I'm going to do is delete generated event files just to get rid of the proxy media I just created, just to get back to kind of where we started. And I'll target that Vader drive again. And then I'll create this proxy media just real quickly one more time. File, transcode media, proxy media. So now what I have is a situation many people run into. There's my RAID that has both original media and proxy media on it. How do I get that proxy media to a separate location? And the basic answer is you have to delete it and regenerate it. Okay? So that may seem like, it depends on how much media you have. Let's say you have a ton of media. If I have a project in here, so here I have a new project, and I'm going to take one of my clips and put it in my project. So what you would have to do is first delete the proxy media you have in that one location, because you cannot generate new proxy media while you still have existing proxy media. Final Cut, if I choose this event now and I try to, even though I changed the location, so now I'll go into my modify settings and say, hey, I want to create proxy media in my library. So I'll target the library, and then I'll choose the event, and I'll say file, transcode media, and it says, it already exists, can't do it. So what I have to do is first just delete the proxy media. So I can choose File, Delete Generated Event Files, and delete that proxy media, and then just go ahead and create it again in the new location.
Now, if you wanted to, how would you use this if you want to, I have something I want to send off to somebody else. Like I don't want to upload the original footage. I want them to edit it and then send me back the project file.
Well, this is one thing we cover in the training, but we don't use proxy media for it. What we have is each person needs to start out with the same media. So generally one person will import it all. They can do a consolidation command to move it to another drive and send that drive to the other person if it's a lot of media.
But what if that's not possible? Like what if you wanted to have I take this project and I import it all. He's making fun of me again.
He's making a.
Right out here in the fringe of
Okay, wait. Hear me out, though. Hear me out. All right. So I want to be able to do an edit, and I have humor me just for a minute.
Hey, I'm here. I'm loving this.
Hey, everyone thought when I did 1080p
I know.
podcast in
crazy.
2006, I was crazy.
You were in 2006.
Okay, but
You're mainstream now. You're mainstream.
all right. So anyway, it just takes a little time for the mainstream to catch up. So this is the fridge. It's all going that direction. All right. So I have I do record, and I've got 6 terabytes of content. Okay, and I want to make that I want to make that into something much smaller, something I can put on Dropbox, something I can, or some kind of version of some upload. So what I want to do is I want to take that and make the proxies. 6 terabytes may be a lot, but let's say 8 terabyte. And I want to make proxies out of it and send it to an editor so they can cut it up really quickly. And then I just want them to send me back the project file. Now we used to do this
So
a
you could
lot.
relink to
so
the
in Final
original
Cut
media.
7, this was something we actually did a fair bit of. So we'd have people edit MacBreak actually in somewhere else. And so what we would do is we would just generate all those files. We'd link it all up. They'd edit it in some kind of low resolution format. They send it back to us. We'd relink it, and then we hit render and we'd render out the whole thing.
Depending on the actual stuff you're doing, and you have to be careful if you're using the character generator or doing any repositioning, you could do that, from what I understand, with the XML. The XML of your project, or of your library rather, retains much of what you need, but you will lose font formatting, and you'll lose, I believe, repo things if you were taking shots.
And very rarely in the kind of stuff that I'm doing, we would need that.
I don't think if you only have the proxies and you never had the original media, I don't think that Final Cut can see them as proxies. I don't think that's possible. So I don't know a direct answer to your question. The way we recommend doing that is that if you just wanted to give somebody a subset of the project, you would make a project, subset of a library, you would make a project with the media that you want or that edit, and then you would do a consolidation command on that project. So it just takes the media used in that project and you give them that media only instead of the whole library. So they're working with a subset of the media.
Right.
It doesn't trim the media, it's not proxy, but that's one way
I
to
do
do
think that it's an issue, in my opinion, with this new
The
version.
relink. It's basically gets down to relinking.
And we were talking about this earlier, and in my opinion, what it ought to do is when you, can I just sort of move this over here?
Yeah.
When you're here and you say storage location modify settings, you're telling it to do something for the future. If you had, let's say you have 2 folders, 2 drives, you should be able to say go to this drive, wherever it is, and look on this drive for stuff that matches this, like the Final Cut proxy folder.
Right.
And just have it say, oh, that's the one you want. So you could actually do a Finder copy of your media, which I think is what you're talking about. So you should be able to point to where the media is. And so if someone sent you a copy of the media, you could just open up this library and say media's here. And then it sees the folders that are named correctly according to how Final Cut names the folders now, and it would recognize that it was all there. It should be that simple. It's not that simple.
Or one other way, I don't know if this would satisfy the same thing, is if you could go to your event and say File, Consolidate Event Files. Currently this command will always move original media, and you can choose whether the optimized or proxy media goes with it. But if this command would allow you to just move the proxy media,
That would be.
and
Alex
I think the
happy.
reason it doesn't is because proxy media requires the, but that would solve it. But I don't think it would actually work. I think there needs to be something else under the hood that Final Cut is able to see just proxy
So
media.
you're saying if I go in and I'm set in the proxy mode switch, which I believe is over here, you'll give me 3 chances to get it. So now I'm in proxy mode. That you're saying if I took this project, made a copy of it, or this library, made a copy of it to another drive, and deleted the originals, it wouldn't work.
No. So let me back up. The whole process that I just described was we have original media on a RAID, and the proxies are local. We're disconnecting the RAID and walking away from it, and it's going to be okay. It will see the proxies because those were created from those originals. Final Cut remembers the originals. If you try to link to them, obviously you won't see them. You have to be in proxy mode. But I think if you just send the proxies to somebody, maybe you could send that library that you just made.
Yeah, now you zip that thing up.
Zip that thing up.
Dropbox
Maybe
it,
that'll
and
work.
now
Maybe that'll
you're
work.
Cutting in
Maybe that'll
Africa.
work. That might work. That's
Or
what we're
you call up Apple, your friends at Apple, and add the 2 commands that are missing from that menu that says consolidate library, including original, optimized, proxy, and audio.
Right.
Because then
Well, and the reality is
you
that
could get what you
while
want.
this is a great tip and it's very, very useful, Apple should just make this right. I mean, there should be better media management to sort this out.
the proxies is still a little.
Yeah, I think what happens, and again, we were talking about this, where original media folder contains audio. If you synchronize your clips using Sync and Link or Apple Sync, whatever, proxies look at that original audio because the audio doesn't proxy just the picture.
That's right.
And so the audio should be separated because it's used in more than one place. You need to be able to move it separately in this instance. So you would want to be able to say consolidate with proxies and audio or whatever you want.
Agreed.
Yes.
Draw the menu, Photoshop that up, mail it.
Done.
Done.
Write 3-page paper.
I think
Yeah.
we're going to test that proxy thing because that could actually
Yeah.
work. Just,
Well,
I could send you a library
'cause
of proxy
basically
only
what
and
you're
say,
saying
here you go,
is-
make a change, send
Right.
it back.
Basically, what you're saying is in your example, you disconnect from the RAID, and now I can go work on the train.
Right.
So take that project,
Right, and give it to
zip
him.
it,
Right.
send it away. And then he's going to either kick out an XML or the library, the stripped down library file, and send it back. That's the question. Will it
The
reconnect?
Flexo library.
Is that what you call
Yeah.
it?
Flexo.
The Flexo library.
And you
Inside the
can,
bundle.
so you can separate all the proxy media from the original media, but you can also separate just a subset because if you only wanted to proxy what's in your current project, you can select a project itself and choose to delete generated project files, and that'll just delete the proxy files on your
Right.
RAID in that project, and then you can regenerate just those, and you'll have some proxies on your RAID that aren't in your project, and then proxies on your local machine. So you don't have to regenerate an entire library of
Right.
proxy files.
This could use a graphical representation of it.
I think so. It's a little complicated.
Yeah, we need a white. We need a
Then
whiteboard
if you do
next time, I
this,
think.
then no. If you do that, you're screwed. If you do this,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what was that? Or flow chart. Yeah, flow chart.
Well, we have run this. I know it's hard to believe. We've been talking for over an hour and a half.
Yeah, don't we have
we
another
start at
20
6 at
minutes?
7:40. Is that right?
What?
Tom?
No, but there's the after show.
The
Oh, we
after
do the after show.
There's
Oh.
a thing. There's 90 minutes of the main show, and then there's
We
the
go to the after show.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to tell them that. That was supposed to be the secret.
Oh,
Did I get enough camera time? I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, do
I've
the
been
rest of the
tracking
show
it, and
on
yes, you have.
You've been doing really well. Yeah.
Mark, Chris, Steve, Mike, Noah, thank you so much for coming.
Alex.
Thank you.
It's really, really fun to have you guys. I mean, I think that, this is the first one. I was like, how could we get a group of people that were as good as the first one? And we got a great,
answer
another
was
great
add a chair.
conversation. What?
Add a chair.
Add a chair, exactly. So I think we're building a really, really great, group of people. Hopefully you guys will come up and play again.
Happy to. Thank you.
All right, great.
Yeah, this
Thanks
is
so
awesome.
much. Yeah.
Great to get this many people that are so knowledgeable, and the way you can build off things. It's phenomenal what you've done. It's great.
Anyway, I'm really glad you guys were able to come. And thank you to everyone who came, was part of this experiment again, watched, asked questions. We didn't get to all of them. There's a lot of them coming in, but just save them up because we're going to do this soon. We don't have the date for the next one, but it'll be sometime in September. We'll try to persuade a bunch of people to come by and say hi again. So thanks so much for watching the Final Cut Virtual User Group Episode 2.